Our next speaker is the master of the power of a good question, like the last one that we just heard was a great one. She's the founder, CEO of Heads Up, Inspiration from Information. And we also learned a little bit this morning that if you knock on her hotel room door with appetizers, you might get shot. So let's welcome Lisa Elder to the stage.
Thank you. Oh, I think I'm going to go down for that one. I made some notes from this morning, and I brought them with me because they are totally speaking to what I'm going to talk to you about. So I'm very interested in getting you all to be a little bit involved with my talk. So I'd like to kind of practice a little bit of audience participation in that I'll set out a question to you, which is, what's one thing that you learned this morning? Anybody? What about care? It starts with care. Who said that? Is it Kimberly? Yeah. So it starts with care. I know Kimberly likes oysters because we stood beside each other yesterday. So I wanted to start with this idea of harnessing the power of a good question. That means how to use good questions to your advantage and to the mutual advantage of the person that you're speaking with. So it's a win-win. And it's very interesting for me. I'm writing a book on this, and I was talking to people about the power of a good question. Some people don't like the word power. They think it's too aggressive, as in you're going to have power over me. And I kind of say, well, I think about it as like the power of love. It's not you over someone. It's this mutual thing that can happen, which is powerful. So this is the power of a good question. And I'm going to teach you some things today, but I want to start with a story about men. You see, I love it when the men laugh. As a marketing researcher, that's what I do, and that's what Heads Up is about. I was tasked by Canadian Tire, actually, as part of their 25-year planning process, to understand men like no other. No, but we want to be the best in understanding men. Oh, okay. So we started doing a whole bunch of research with men, and we gave them some homework, which was, kind of physical. It was neat. And we asked these guys from about, they were 18 to 65, and it was asking them what is a real motivator in their life. What are 3 ways they see themselves as men in terms of their roles? It talked about what barriers they feel they need to overcome. I even asked them about a secret that they had never told anybody else. Can I tell you what that secret was, by the way? One man, he didn't want to tell me, so I had to give him some rope, some line. And then later he says, sometimes I feel that people are a bit envious of me. And I'm going, oh, really? Can you give me an example of that? He goes, like when I'm at the Y. This guy was not an Adonis or anything. He was a nice looking man, maybe about 60. He goes, when I'm at the Y, and there's a door, in the fitness class, and I see people looking through the door, at people like me who are participating, I think maybe they won't come in because I kind of look so good. I went, oh, I love that. I love that. That was the start of it. Anyway, so as I'm doing the introduction within the focus groups, but I only had 3 men, so they were in comfortable chairs, not around a table like you might imagine. Comfortable chairs, they have their homework in front of them. And I say, now, here you are as 3 men, and I'm a woman, and I don't want you to treat me like a woman. Just kind of do your guy thing, and I'll be here for 90 minutes. I was going to talk to them. And the man to my left, this is my first interview after the homework that they'd done. And the man to my left says, oh, so you're not going to interrupt me? And I go, no. And he goes, oh, so you're not going to finish my, and I didn't take the bait. And he goes, sentences. And I go, no. And he goes, yeah, okay, we'll see. This, by the way, was practically the precursor for the entire study in the end. But I thought, isn't that interesting in that over the next 90 minutes, I had to stay in my seat and be calm and listen to them really talk, really, really talk. I asked them questions about how they felt about life and their goals and, you know, being a guy, being a man, being a person, being a man. And at the end of it, I remember one of the guys, and this fellow was also very happy to my left, but the three men, they said, you know, I've never had one of these conversations with anyone in my life. And they go, I'd like to go home and have one of these conversations with my wife. And I'm thinking, it's never going to happen. Like, because it went slower and slower and deeper and deeper. And I was like going, I'm not going to interrupt, and I'm not going to finish their sentences. But every inch in my body was trying to do it, except that I had my researcher hat on. So what I'm going to do with you today is actually share my research hat with you and encourage you to be like a researcher in some circumstances that will help you in your business and in your personal life. And we're going to do some stories about guests along the way, okay, so that you can internalize it. So hopefully it'll be very good. So what came to me about this men with the Canadian Tire men is I kind of had an aha. Like, I'd done research at that point for about 20 years. So it was nice to have an aha. And I thought, you know, what this showed me is that if I could move questions from my research into personal life, like these men might go home and have these conversations with their wives, I knew that human beings would be in a better place, that the world would be a better place. So I thought, wow, you know, my job, if I brought it into the personal world, would bring a lot of joy. And then I thought, well, also there's an amazing connection that happens so that people really feel close to you and they really feel, you know, heard, and really they feel cared for, which is a neat thing, what a connection's all about. And then lastly, it really does span, like my bio, my heads up bio was, the last line was, Lisa knows more about total strangers than members of her own family. I wrote the bio, and that was actually true. And why was that? Because I asked total strangers things that I was afraid to ask my family members. I went deeper with men and women in research than I ever did with my husband or my family. Because I kind of believe in privacy, and I'm kind of an introvert, if you can believe it. So I grew up in a family that was kind of had nice, you know, you just don't need to go there. It's a bit private, you know, that kind of thing. So research gave me this avenue to be very inquisitive and to really take the what do you call it, the brakes off. And this is what I'm going to encourage you to do today, because now I know how to do it in the personal side so that you won't get into trouble. So this morning I'm going to talk about 4 skills that will actually move you, I hope, from here to there. And I'm hoping that I actually feel some of them this afternoon. And I'm hoping that some of you do them on each other. So let's see what they are eventually. I've got 4, very easy to do. And they're free. Well, I wasn't free. No, but they're basically free. So you can do it in 5 minutes and you can do it for free. So why wouldn't you? So let's talk a little bit about some of the problems that I see happening out in the world, and wonderful conversations this morning about what's going on. There can be issues in your organization. So I might have a hands up at the end of this, but how many of you in your companies, like in your organizations, kind of feel isolated sometimes, like you're just holding the bag? Like, am I the only one caring about this or really doing anything on this? People aren't really accepting your wisdom. You think that you have a lot of experience and something to show, but people aren't really kind of nabbing at it. People aren't really emotionally buying into their job. They're just doing the job, but as we heard this morning, they're not maybe caring as much as you wish they would care. And also what I find is conversations can only go project deep. So sometimes people think questions are good questions, but they're not. They're just questions. Should I do this? Should I do that? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? That's not a good question. That's just a question. You know, the dime a dozen. So sometimes people in organizations, they just do the job and you talk to them about the job and that's as far as it goes. Like Giannis, I loved it this morning when you talked about someone and they said, you know, it's almost like how can you get people to follow by example instead of, you know, lead by example. And you talked about the person who wasn't smiling and who wasn't engaged. When you actually see within the organization someone like that, if you ask them good questions, you will get them to smile and be engaged. I'll give you a small example. Let's say that someone wasn't smiling and they were not engaged. What's a question you might ask them? You haven't even heard the 4 tips. What's a question you might ask someone? Well, first of all, you might not ask them a question, and that's the first thing I'm going to talk to you about. But what's a question you might ask them who is not smiling, not engaged? Are you all right? Are you feeling okay? What's wrong? What's another one over here? How are you doing today? Right. Yes, and all of those will work. A little bit on the care front, and I find with the sensitive questions, because I'm going to talk to you more about why you would ask questions and exactly what question you should ask. But what I like with somebody like that is to say, I've noticed this, you know, and I care about you. And I'm just wondering if we could have a little chat about stuff, and I'd love to hear. And then like what's going on? You know, tell me a little something. How's your life these days? How, you know, in a very soft way, not being assumptive. You'll see in a minute. Because these people can have a parent in another country who is in a war zone. They can have a spouse who has just been diagnosed as terminal. They themselves can worry about something, like, it doesn't matter what, some kind of sensitive issue even with themselves. And they are consumed. Or they can just be people who aren't that way wired, which is just good for you to know. Like maybe they're just never happy and maybe they're in the wrong job. Put them in that place where you can hide them. Who said that? But the power of a good question is you can get in under that and understand what's going on, so then you can fix it. Now, the Harvard Business Review, I think, is pretty neat, because if you have a friend, you might say to that person, do you have a friend in this organization? The data seems to suggest that a relationship or a friendship in the company, out of 12 factors, is the number 1 in making someone happy in their job and staying in the job. A relationship is the number 1 out of 12 factors that is correlated to job satisfaction. So if you can actually create within your organization relationships, and that, you know, means friendships and people who care about each other, it's powerful. Now let's talk about business partners and suppliers. Do you have these kinds of symptoms where you don't really think that they're that special, and they don't really think that you walk on water either? Does anyone have a supplier where you go, yeah, they're okay? Like they're okay? Or how many of you have suppliers where you go, I love those people? Give me hands up on that. More? Anybody else? I love those people. Good. I remember with one woman who I really had a great relationship with, and then she got snarky. And over about a month, you know, very curse emails and all that kind of thing. And I thought, wow, I've done something wrong. Now, I try to keep my nose pretty clean when it comes to relationships and talking about people behind their back and everything. I don't believe in it. But I thought, wow, something's happened here because this is personal. And I've obviously done something wrong. So I waited till I saw her in a month, which I should not have ever have waited. But at those days, I didn't know what I know now. So I waited for about a month when I saw her in person, and I said, you know, I wanted to talk to you about this because obviously I've done something wrong. And she goes, no, Lisa, come. She drags me into a little room, and she goes, I might cry. She said, my son has killed a 12-year-old by driving around an ice cream truck and inadvertently hit her and killed her. So we're going through this thing right now, which is terrible. And I went, oh, okay. Like I just was blown away. And the thing that I learned is I could have been there for her a month earlier, maybe, and I should have said to her at the time, I feel something's different. I worry that it's something that I've done, and I'm wondering if we could have a chat about it. Like, I should have done that, a couple of good questions. And I don't know whether I would have ever been able to help with her, but you know, the sub-theme today is I don't think you should think about people as guests. No, I don't like the word. How do you feel about that? How are you feeling now? I think you should treat people like humans. I like it better than guests. I don't like any label, including a guest label. How about treating that person like a person? And actually, I don't even like family. If you talk about family and research, people like what I find about family and research is many people don't like their families. I won't do a show of hands on that. My brother, my sister, my mother, my father, my stepfather, my, you know, whatever, they all have problems. Usually sisters, by the way, if you want to know.
I respectfully disagree
Okay.
with you because if you treat people like people, people are killing people, but you would kill family. No, hopefully not.
Yes, interesting. So thank you for that. I'm going to go into the human side, the beautiful humanism side of people rather than just people. Strange people. It's not strange people, it's beautiful people, beautiful humans, but thank you for that. Another one, so when I talk about guests with you, is sometimes you can have a guest and you go, same old, same old. Can they not read the details? Did they not see the sign at the back? Did they not read the, you know, have I told them this 5 million times? Okay, tell me an issue that a guest typically has. Someone shout it out. What isn't? The key is not working. Right, okay, good. What, you agree with that? Yeah. What I find is that whenever people, and this is what's really neat about being a researcher, if you put your researcher on, whenever I interview someone, I don't know who they're like. I've interviewed people who have head to toe tattoos, and I might have a certain perception about them or not, and I just find the beauty of them, you know, the beauty of every person, the best part of every person. I think that's the key thing. And with something like a guest is you have to somehow supersede the issue which is driving you crazy and get to the person, because the people will feel it. You feel it. If you feel, you know, this whole thing about transactional, you feel if someone is helping you with your key or if they're helping you as a human. You will feel the difference. Oh, let me get you a new key is dealing with the key. How would you deal with the human, the beautiful human, to Giannis's point, my point, but your correction? How would you deal with the beautiful human? What would you say? Yeah, you might apologize to say, I'm sorry that your key is not working. Yeah. What else might you say to them? Yeah, I know how, a little bit of empathy, right? It's very good. And you might say something about, you might kind of go into a new topic. You know, while I get this for you, what's on for this afternoon? Or something like that. And hopefully they won't say, well, I was going to be in my room. And then the other thing is your personal life. Like if you're not understood, you know, if you are in a great relationship, what they will say, would you mind putting down that number 4 there, Todd? Yeah. If you are in a great relationship, what people will say is that if you feel understood, you will actually be better. You will have almost all the other radars for success. They say that it's more important than being accepted or appreciated or approved or loved, even loved. to feel understood, they say psychologically is the number one thing. So in your personal life and in your business life, do you understand other people? And are you understood? Are you really understood? Now, let me do a little show of hands. Okay, maybe like a little even. How many feel in your business life that people totally get who you are? Let me see. 2 people. What an opportunity. What an opportunity. And if you are the person who goes out and better understands everyone that you come up with, like it can be a small thing. Like yesterday, I'm having oysters with Kimberly. And, you know, because I want to, I turn it on and I start talking to the young guy, 19, doing the oyster shucking. And I find out all about him. And then I find out with all this hard work, he's never had an oyster in his life. And I'm going, wow, if I took your phone, and I go, do you know where I'm going? And he goes, well, I'm not sure. And I go, if I took your phone, would you have your first oyster? And he says to me, do you think I should? That's a good question. And I went, well, I think you should. What about you? And he goes, I will. I'll do it. Now, Pierre was at that point standing behind me. What do you call him? A super chef? What does he call him? Executive chef. So I'm thinking, I hope he's not going to fire this guy or something, because he's starting to eat the oysters, which in Toronto are about, $7 a piece. However, he did. So he sat there and had his oyster, and I'm going, okay, well, do I totally understand him? He's talking about getting his red seal. He's talking about being part of an organization. He's talking about the joy of being able to move, like this lifestyle from place to place. I don't know if I totally understood him, but I know that he felt more understood than he did if I'd sat there and just had some oysters. And it's very fun for me. So I'm going to build a little chart here, and if you're going to take one picture, this would be it in a moment. She says, hopefully. So what is it that the power of a good question is all about? First of all, you're going to build your knowledge. So why is someone doing this? Why are they not smiling? Why are they not accepting this program, which I think is fabulous? There could be a negative going on. Why is someone withdrawing from their responsibilities? You just gain information. The other thing that we talked about is true understanding, because you're going to understand their motivations. What's the full context behind their attitude or their behavior? And then just because you understand them, the point I want to kind of underscore, just because you understand them doesn't mean you have to agree with them. Don't worry about that. Just because you lay back and you say, tell me about, okay, I see, doesn't mean that you're going to go do what they want to do or that you really agree with them. It's two totally different things. What you want to do first is just ask, and then you can decide what you're going to do with the information. And they might, if they're really superstars, they might ask you back some things, and then you'll really get going. And then the third thing is you really have this greater empathy, so you really get them. And it's so rare for people to feel that way. I mean, with me in my relationship, I think I'm a little odd, and I know that my husband totally gets me. It's super empowering. It's like fabulous, because I can be whatever. I can say things or do things that are a little bit over the edge, and he seems to be okay with it. He's probably doing another speech that says, I can't stand when my wife does these things. Anyway. But the idea that when you have more knowledge and true understanding and greater empathy, what it is really all about, this power of a good question, is deeper connections. That's the human to human in a good way. Now, I've put anyone you choose because sometimes I don't choose to do it. I can be as dismissive as the next person. You have to consciously choose to do it, and that is a really neat thing, because when you choose to go in with the power of a good question, people get it, like they feel it. They feel like they're interesting to you, and they usually will be once you get some interesting stuff uncovered. and you will create somehow this connection. And the neat thing is that if you don't go there, they also notice that. So in our human behavior, if someone doesn't ask you questions and doesn't kind of get below the surface, you basically don't get connected with them. You don't particularly like them. They just go by like a ship in the night. Okay, fine, I talked to you. You made no difference. You made no difference to me. You didn't impact me at all. Did anyone find a great connection at the reception last night? Did anyone meet someone that they felt a great connection with? Who was that?
I hope everyone.
I chatted with Krista.
Kristen, yes.
I've been dealing with her, basically just planning the conference for the last 2 months.
Yep.
There's a lot of email and a lot of sometimes quick phone calls, but I actually had a chance to really chat with her and understand what makes her tick.
Yes, understand what makes her tick. And that's the neat thing about this research mindset that you can put on, because that's usually what we have to do is understand what makes people tick in a certain category, you know, in order to help a client. Why are moms serving Jell-O? And it's not because it's a bright, jiggly thing. They're actually quite Machiavellian and trying to create a relationship that the kids will never forget. That's really why they're serving Jell-O. So when you really understand the full context of what's going on, Jell-O has a chance, not to kind of advertise that, but they need to know it. They need to have that knowledge, otherwise the brand can't make a connection. So what does this bring you? So not selfishly speaking in a bad way, but actually for your own value, what does this bring you? I think there's 4 things. First of all, your spirit. You will not feel as isolated. You know, when Gallup did a study, they figured that about 9% of people in the world don't have one friend. You know, and what do friends do, right? They kind of get you, they understand you, they ask you hopefully good questions, they go deeper with you. And there's going to be less conflict because you have greater understanding. So usually when you have greater understanding, you have more, what would you call it, grace with people who are coming at something differently than you are. Second thing, you get more credibility, more support, and greater leadership. What I find is really neat is sometimes the best leaders, John Cassidy is one of them who I worked with years ago, who was heading up Campbell's, when in Kraft and then Campbell's and then Chorus Entertainment. Does anyone know John Cassidy? Fabulous guy. He would ask amazing questions, and his leadership was just as much with the questions he asked than his answers. And this is a neat thing. If you ask great questions, they can be just as strong, if not stronger, in showing your team about your leadership than if you had great answers. Another one is your abilities, because you're going to make better decisions, because you have this understanding, you have this knowledge, you have this empathy, and then you're going to know what to do. Like, what do I do with these people who are not playing along? Or what do I do with this personal relationship where it's just not going the way I want it to go? I've got to get underneath and find out. And then your impact. You're going to have greater impact, more influence, and more value, more personal impact. That's kind of exciting. Well, let me just see on that one. How many of you this is the complete chart. Okay. How many of you would like to have, however you can interpret this, more personal impact? Just curious. Yeah, okay. Because I think what I'm kind of going here is that it's not that you need to change the world, but what you are doing when you're with people is you're making a positive difference. You're just improving things a little bit. And many of you might do it already. So let's go into the 4 skills. First of all, this one is just so primary. Just ask. Don't assume, and just ask. Now, if you have anything during your day, what would make you not ask? Not ask. Like, you're in a situation and you're just not asking a question. You don't really know what you're doing, but you're not asking. Why wouldn't you? Fear. Interesting. What are you afraid of? You're afraid of the answer. Yeah. Okay, very good. What's another reason why you might not ask? Privacy. Yes. You don't want to invade someone's privacy. Very good. Anything else? Pardon me, shame? What's shame about? Did someone say shame? Oh, ashamed to ask. Yes, because you should know. You should know the answer already. Okay, good. Who said that? This, Alexandra, is what I find, and this is what I'd like to break. This is my joy in this whole topic, is that if you ask a question, you're actually showing that you care. Can I tell a story about Alexandra this morning? I get on the elevator with her talking about, I loved it when Hani was talking about values of a brand, because we do a lot of brand work, of course, values of a brand. And he's really saying they're very good human values, like belonging and compassion and being recognized, those three. So I'm at a conference, I know one person, two people. I know Mark, I kind of met Salim. You know, I've talked to these people more than once, that's about it. So I'm not feeling like, like I'm in my own environment. And I get off into the elevator this morning. There's a woman standing there who happens to be Alexandra. I don't know her. And we're just going down one floor. And she goes, "Oh, you must be a speaker." And I go, "Well, yes, I am. How do you know that?" And she goes, "Because I know everybody here. But I don't know you." And I go, "Well, nice to meet you." But that actually created this little connection. You know, and now she could have said to me, "Oh, I don't really, you wouldn't need it. This was not an improvement. What you did was perfect." But she could have asked me a question if she didn't know who I was. "Oh, I see you're at the conference. We haven't met. What are you doing here?" You know, this kind of thing. We could have had this little connection, which is great. So the idea here is to not assume. So one time I was doing a training program for the Institute of Canadian Advertising with junior people. And they were, I knew that I had sent in a spy for the 2 sessions prior to me doing my 3 sessions. And I kind of said, "I want you to observe these people and I want to know everything about them by the time I, go see them." So I was going to go do a talk. And she goes, "There's a real, Mr. Negative is over here and he looks like this. And then we have like a clique over here and they talk all the way through the sessions." And she gave me the whole rigmarole. I thought, wow, I'm going to have to go in heavy here. So I walked in to do the training with a beer in my hand, open, drinking it. Came to the area where I was going to teach. And I said, what do you think? What do you think of me?" "Oh, I think you're cool." I thought they would be judgmental. Like, "What are you doing drinking on the job?" No, these were young people. They thought I was cool. And I'm going, "Okay, so now what would happen if I told you that this is Coke in here? What would happen if I told you that it was water in here?" And the more information that they got, the more they would change their mind. And this I really love about asking, like, have you heard the story of the man who's on a subway and he sees a man with his 2 children who are all over the place? Have you heard this one? And the 2 kids are swinging on the things like a jungle bar and they're going around the poles and they're stepping on the seats. And there's a man opposite this little family kind of going, "This is terrible. This is pathetic. And I think that guy should be roping those kids in." So then he goes at one point over to the man and he goes, "I notice that your kids are a little out of control." And the father says, "Yeah." He says, "My wife has just passed away, their mother, at the hospital, and I'm bringing them home and I don't really know what to do." Now that changes your perspective. How would you deal with this situation because you have more knowledge? And if you can ask some questions to just open up the full story, you're going to be better off. And basically, don't assume. Like when I was doing, my Vespa, I have a Vespa, and I was doing a motorcycle class in order to get my motorcycle license for my little Vespa. And so I know that people are judging the hell out of me. Okay, fine. Actually, I even judge Vespa drivers myself. So when we were doing introductions, and people were supposed to talk about their ride, I didn't want to say my Vespa. So I said that I had a Harley, 350 LX4, whatever that is. And people are going, yeah, And I go, well, actually, I ride a Vespa. But, if you have certain information about someone, you're going to kind of judge them differently. But what I want you to do is just ask a question and don't assume. Just ask a question and don't assume, and let it go over you like a wonderful researcher would. And really, number 2 here is suspending that judgment. Now, can anyone give me an example where you have a very tricky situation with a guest and you have to suspend judgment? Can anyone think of something where you are judging away because they're driving you crazy? Can anyone think of one of those? What was that?
My key doesn't work.
Yeah, okay, my key doesn't work, right.
Suppose a young couple checking in, 19, 20, on a Friday night, you think you're in trouble.
Yeah, okay, good. And what do you do? What do you do with them?
Depends. I mean, lived experience, you may immediately think, I'm going to put them in the trouble section of the hotel.
Yes. Yeah. And what I find is that if you can open up your conversation with anyone, it's very, very handy for creating that caring thing that you're trying to do. You're caring for a guest, or you're caring for another human being. And it's hard sometimes to really find where that caring's going to come from. I mean, I was at the dentist the other day, and they had to give me a new hygienist, and I had to get into this 10 o'clock appointment by hook or by crook. And she asked me, this stranger woman, and she says to me, how's your day been so far? I even thought that was nice. And I said, well, it's been busy. That to me is just a thing that everybody says, oh, I'm so busy. So I went, it's been busy. And she went, okay. And then while she's sitting me down on the big chair, she goes, Lisa, use my name, Lisa, when you say busy now, is this kind of a personal busy or a work busy? I love her already. And I go, well, actually, it was a work busy. And she goes, oh, so can I say now that now could be a little personal time for you? I love that, like that. And this brand new stranger with me had made a connection with me because she had talked to me as a human being instead of like a patient. What does a hygienist normally say to you? Open your mouth. How have your teeth been? Any changes in your teeth since last time you came? They start there. But why not start at that more personal? It's not really super personal. It's just a little bit more human, and people will love it. So when you suspend judgment also, as this researcher, you're really saying, I am open to whatever you say. Now, I just want to mention one important thing here. There's a difference between being a researcher and being an interviewer. A really important difference. When you think about an interviewer, they get in the way too much. They're way too about them. Like I love Oprah. Who doesn't, I suppose? But I really like Oprah. But leading questions, she's all over it. How devastated did that make you feel? No, how did that make you feel? Is the interviewer question, the researcher question. How did that make you feel? You don't lead it. You don't lead them because you don't have any judgment. So interviewers, it's kind of about them. They want to catch you. right? They want to get you to reveal something that you've never said to anyone else. You know, they want to create some news. They want to have a sound bite. That to me is an interviewer. But as a researcher, you don't really care. Whatever they say is good. As long as they tell you something, it's good. And this is the way to operate with people in your company and with guests and in your personal life. It goes right across the board. The third thing is to find out why, but don't ask why. Never. You should never again say why. Just don't. It's a nice, easy rule. Don't ask why. Don't ask why, ever. But you always are finding out why. That's super important. But there's a thing that happens when you ask why. Think about your growing up. You might have heard whys like, it has a lot of baggage, like whys like, why didn't you come home on time? Why haven't you picked up your room? You know, why haven't you done your homework? Why haven't you fed the dog? Do you see what I mean? They're accusatory. They're not real questions. They're not questions without assumptions and without judgment. They're just kind of, why haven't you done it? It doesn't sit well with people. But if you find out why, you can do that, but just ask every other word. How, what, when, who, and you're going to find out the real why. And let me give you another reason, which is a psychologically based one, and it's pretty cool. And it's the difference between system 1 and system 2. What happens with system 1 is it's all about stories and emotions. So the bottom line is you want to keep people in system 1. So if you're trying to find out why something is going on or why someone is behaving like they are, so let's say that you have an unruly guest. You don't say, why are you making such a commotion? Why are you such a shit disturber? Whatever you would say. I guess you wouldn't say that to a guest, would you? Maybe you would. But you need to find that out. So you might say, hey, you know, Mr. Johnson, what's going on? You know, who you got in there? You know, how are you thinking this is going to play out tonight? You know, what are you going to do about the mess in the room? You know, what are you thinking about the neighbors here? Like, is there anything that you think you could do to pipe down? Like, if you do all of these things around the why, you're actually going to have a way better, you're going to find out better information. And when you stay in system 1, you get them to tell the stories or the anecdotes. So you might say to someone who doesn't smile at all, at some point you get them to say, this is going to sound really bad, so it has to get crept up on a little bit, but basically you're going to get to the point where you say, have you always never smiled? Because like I as a kid, I remember when I was in my first job, I had 3 of the women at the counter, and they were looking at me. I was about 17. They were looking at me and talking to each other. And one of them came up to me and went, Lisa, we want you to know that we're here. And I'm going, okay. And whenever you need us, we are here. And I'm going, thank you. And she goes, the 3 of them, who is hitting you? And I go, well, actually, no one's hitting me. Like, why do you say that? And they go, the bruises. And I'm going, what bruises? And they saw these indentations in my chubby cheeks and thought that someone had kapowed me, So I know they totally cared, but if they had said to me in this very tricky situation, like I love the fact that they did that, by the way. I will always remember it. I don't remember places, I remember people and moments, but I will never forget that. But if she had come up to me and she goes, we're kind of concerned, we're wondering about some shading, some things, and we're wondering if they're bruises. If they could have come in at that level and let me said, no, actually, ever since I was a kid, people think that if I don't smile, I'm going to cry, and they think that I have like these shades on my face. Like I could have told them that. Now I still could have been lying, but I wasn't. If you keep people in system 1 about stories and emotions, they will actually tell the truth. What happens in system 2 is it's only 5% of decisions are system 2. 5% of people's actions are based on system 2. And system 2 is the pat answer. It's the correct answer. You know, so someone says, why is it that you picked the Sheraton? Well, I just love the location. No, that isn't why they picked the Sheraton. Might be one little tangible thing. It's a good answer. Check. It's a good answer. But if you talk to someone about, tell me about your stories of the Sheraton. Oh, I used to go there with my dad, you know, and I tried to get my job at the Sheraton part-time in a bar. I know it wasn't the Sheraton, but you know what I mean. They have all these stories. That's actually why they're picking the Sheraton, not because of the location or the system 2 answer. So you want to keep people in system 1. Get them to do the storytelling. So you're gonna ask them who, what, when, and how. And do that with basically everyone you come across. And the last one, which we're gonna try together, is to go 4 deep. And this one is beautiful. Like, I really want you to do this with somebody this afternoon, if not at lunch. Who is willing to do this? You don't even know what it is. Come on. No. Okay, only the people in the back are willing to do it. Okay, some people, okay. The thing with going 4 deep is you ask someone a question and they tell you an answer, and then you listen to what they say and you ask them another question. And you listen to what they say and you give them another question. Okay. So who would like to try this with me? I don't even know. I should make Celine do this with me, but no, I won't. Well, maybe I will. I didn't give a warning, though. Who would like to try going 4 deep? Mark? Just as an example. Mark, is there a job that you used to have as a young guy that you think brings you a certain expertise even today?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, probably my first job as a guest services representative.
Okay, what was that job all about? What do you think was transferable from guest services?
It developed inquisitivity
Mm-hmm.
in how I interact with people.
Mm-hmm.
Some people skills to deal with difficult situations.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you think about, inquisitiveness, that's pretty neat. And if you think about these difficult situations and a skill that you got to hone because of dealing with these kinds of situations, what would you say it was?
A skill. I think it gave me confidence around conversation and gave me confidence around problem solving.
Okay, good. And when you think of yourself today, how much of your job do you think is about problem solving? Like, how important is that to you?
Very important, yeah.
And if you think about problem solving, you think the benefit of being able to solve problems is what? Like, if you went, okay, because I can solve problems, what? What would you say?
I feel like I'm better able to, I'm perceived as having a greater level of ability to support an owner or an operator in my job.
Yeah, so maybe that support and then maybe impact as part of that. That's the Oprah
influence.
question, that's the leading one. That's going 5 deep. That's as simple as it is, 5 deep. So whatever the person says, you just kind of pick, I call it a trip word, and you take it. Tell me about that. I could have gone down the inquisitiveness route, I kind of like that. But then what's the problem solving mean to him? We have 3 co-op students that started this week, and one of them was doing a competitive analysis. That's their job. So they're talking about who do you see as your competition, and how do you, how do you rate them and versus you and your company and blah, blah, blah. So I'd already taught them some of the basics of the power of a good question. It's the first thing I did with them on day one. But I said to her, let's roll this back and you tell me actually a good question about me in competition. And she thought and she thought and she thought and she said, how about this? She goes, do you even care about the competition? I said, that's a good question. Like, it's not who is your, it's not starting on the task. It's like, how do I feel about the competition? If she knew how I felt about the competition, that one actually gets up my nose like crazy, and everybody else I don't even care about, and she found out why that was by asking me how, who, what, when. She's finding out why, but she's never asking why. If she knew all of that, she'd be able to do a competitive review for me that I actually cared about. Now she's doing a competitive review based on whatever you got taught in school about a competitive review. Okay, so what I want you to do is find someone, just find your person, just pair up in twos, that's it. You don't even have to know them. And I'd like you to have a conversation, and one of you is going to go 4 deep with the other, okay? The starting question can be, what's the biggest surprise that you found out so far about this conference? That's just the starting question, and then see if you can go 4 deep, okay? Go. Pair up. You got 6 at this table. Are you guys doing it? Okay. You're trying to piggyback? Okay, try to switch it around. See if you can switch. And the other person does the 4 deep. Switch it around. Switch it. Okay, let me bring it back. I have a little question for you. Did anyone find that the person that they were talking to had a lot to say? Like a lot to say? Let me see. Did anyone say, oh, wow, I asked them a question and on they went? Yeah, which is good, which is good. When I did this the other day, and someone was saying, I asked a question and they just went on and on. Well, you know why that is? Because people aren't being asked questions. They are not getting the airtime. They aren't getting the airtime. So here's a summary just so far, and then I'm going to leave you with some behaviors to avoid, because that will also happen in the conference, and I think you can try out some stuff. So the summary is, don't assume, just ask. Like the other day, someone said, you know, I know that we want to be, you probably want to be a more innovative company. And I'm going, yeah, And I'm literally saying, what they should be asking me is, what does innovation mean to me, right? Like innovative, like what does innovation mean to me? That's what you need. I like this whole cultural thing. If you can share kind of what your vision is, it's not by using a word like we want to be competitive and we want to be innovative. It's what does innovation mean to me? And to Hani's point, what does innovation mean to us and to our brand? Our brand. How are we going to do innovation? Because everyone in the world is doing it. Okay, so here are some behaviors that I'm just going to leave you with because you're going to see them and I want you to break them with the power, using the power of a good question. Now, I do these too. Like this is not a, other people are bad. I think everybody does these behaviors, like seriously. I try to correct myself. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Again, you have to choose. And you can see this. Okay. A freight trainer. A freight trainer is someone who goes on and on and on. They're usually, I think, egomaniacs, or they're very insecure. You can even find lonely people are like this. They just go on and on and on. It's not a dreadful thing. You don't have to criticize them. But when people are in a freight training mode, you have to break them up. Or I think you should break them up. And the way you do that in a very polite way is by asking a good question. Oh, okay, just a second, stop there. You just mentioned, because they usually tell about 19 things. And you just break them up. Usually parents, there's a lot of dads. Does anyone have a dad who's a freight trainer? Yeah? Am I speaking to this table right here? But, and you just kind of go, tell me more about, and then you can go 4 deep on something that's going to create a connection with you that's worth your time. Because the freight trainers are just talking and talking and talking because they think they are fascinating. And really, they're leaving you out. They're not getting to the deep connection. So you're going to use the power of a good question to get that connection because they are just losing you. Like you're just writing them off and doing something else in your mind, which is just a shame. It's a total lost opportunity, especially when they're family members because they're not going to be around forever. Another one is an assumptive talker. Now what these people do is, Lisa, now I'm not sure if you've ever been to Ireland. But, my husband and I went to Ireland, the blah, 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 blah. Okay. Why don't they just ask me, oh, Lisa, have you ever been to Ireland? Well, yes, I have. When did you go to Ireland? Well, I went for 6 months, and my husband is from Ireland, and blah, blah, blah. Oh, we went too. Conversation, connection. They just need to ask the question. This, I don't know if you but, I don't know if you ride a motorcycle but, happens to me. I don't know if you've read this book but, I don't know if you've ever, man to man, I remember hearing this for 20 minutes, one guy talking to another guy I was observing. I don't know if you've ever had a pedicure but. Okay, the one guy is listening to the other guy going, when are you gonna let me into this conversation? It's totally assumptive. You just gotta stop it. And with the power of a good question, you go, oh, actually, before you go any further, I have. Now, you've read that book too. Ask them a question that will get the connection going. It's not a power move. It's just a connecting move so that they just don't go off on their own. Who are they talking to? I always want to know. Now, one-uppers, are fascinating too. They can be, by the way, just people who love the stories of their life and they want to share them. They can be very nice people. Again, I can be a one-upper like anybody else. But the thing about a one-upper is you tell a fascinating story and they have an even more fascinating story. You know that type? You know, oh yes, I went to Kilimanjaro. Oh, did you? Well, I invented Kilimanjaro. You know, I went skiing in the Alps. Oh, well, I've been a ski instructor since I've been 5. Talk, 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 talk. No, not connecting. You know, it's terrible with new mothers. I've got a baby who can sleep all through the night. Oh, well, my baby's been sleeping through the night since they were 1 week old. Well, speaking of 1 week old, you know, my baby has been in a size 4 toddler since they were 1 week. Like, because they're in a bit of a state, though. I have to give them a gimme. But with the one-uppers, just don't do it. Now, what we do in our company, which is very structured, I know, it's a bit much, is I actually stop it. It's terrible to work in my firm, but if I hear a one-upper, I'm going, everyone needs to recognize what someone has said before they one-up it. And when I say recognize, I mean like ask a question. Okay, I climbed up Kilimanjaro. Oh my God, Leanne, you did that? You know, what prompted you to pick Kilimanjaro? Oh, I too love to climb mountains. You know, like you can relate, but you don't one-up. And if you just recognize that they've said something, or even cool story, or you could give permission, that's amazing. Would you want to hear my story about this, or is it kind of, you know, should we move on? You know, they'll tell you. They usually don't want to hear your story, by the way. That's the secret. That's the secret. With researchers, if you start telling your story when you're researching someone, you're doing a bad job. You just give it to them. Give them the gift of a little airtime. Don't one-up. Another one, there's only 2 more. One is a skimmer. And this is to say, you know, going 4 deep, that's a good question. If you just have someone who asks lots of questions. I saw it at a lunch the other day with some clients, and one of them is going, she's very social. They tend to be very social. They ask a lot of questions. They think they're fascinatingly social. And usually they are really nice people, by the way. But she said, and how are the children? She says to this other woman, how are the children? Okay, good. And how's the house? Good. Did you get your car fixed? As in, I remembered that you had a car problem. Did you get the car fixed? Yes, I did. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, yes, and are you still thinking of going to Florida? I remembered that you're going to go to Florida. Like, there's just something that's going on, and I'm going, if she had just gotten one of those topics and gone 4 deep, she would have actually found out about how this person was doing and what was important, or if she'd even listened to where this person, if she just said, how are things going? I got interviewed by the National. This is just a total plug, but I'm gonna tell you what happened to me. I got interviewed by the National. It was a very big thing for me, scary. And they called me up and they did this thing, and it was kind of neat on a Wednesday up at the cottage. At Friday, I got invited to our very close friends 2 cottages down. Okay, should I really even, is this on tape? Okay, here's what happened. What do you think happened? I'll tell you what happened. For 3 hours I was with them, and not once did they say, Lisa, how are things with you? Does this happen to everybody? I think it does. People told me the other day I went to a party and not one person asked me how I was. It happens. I know it happens. Why do we accept that? So I was dying, like if they just given me 1 inch, you know, to say, oh my gosh, the most amazing thing happened. And I might have dropped, they were really great, I could have just dropped the fact that I got interviewed. And if I'd really trusted them, I would have known that they would have asked me 3 questions and I could have relaxed. But usually what people will do with you is they'll start freight training because they don't believe that they will get asked any more questions. So they have to tell you the whole story without taking a breath. That's why they freight train also. They don't think that you're going to listen or ask another question. So don't be a skimmer. Even a skimmer is better than asking no questions at all, but try and go 4 deep. And the last one, God bless them, are passive listeners. And what a passive listener are people who think that we've lost the art of listening, which we have, by the way, you know, this whole active listening thing of the 80s and 70s, but we have lost. But what they do in that is they just really listen and they don't say a thing. They don't ask one question, but by God, they're listening. They might be, which is great, but it's only half the job. I think they're getting off easy. Can you just say, can those active listeners or passive listeners, just ask one question? You know, so I was at a funeral the other day, and my relative was standing beside me who is a passive listener, usually knits at social events, listens though, never says a thing. They make you feel like you're not fascinating because they don't ask anything. They listen, but you don't even know what they think and whether they care. They're giving you nothing. There's no connection. They're listening, but there's no connection. Like, it's a total missed opportunity. If those people, so what I said to her, power of a good question, is I said, you know, while you're looking at this crew, she's over at the wall, of course. That's what a passive listener would do. I said, when you're looking at this crew, what are you thinking? Assuming she's thinking something, I figured she would be. And she goes, I was wondering about those two, you know, my cousin and the boyfriend, what he does. And I go, what do you think he does? She goes, I don't know. I've been imagining that maybe he's this and that. I'm thinking, why doesn't she maybe go over and quietly say, hey, you know, I was just kind of curious. We haven't met. You know, what are you up to these days? Like, she could have done that, but it's maybe not her style. But what I'm saying is she's not making the connection. And I think the world, including hospitality, can use better connections. I loved what Todd said. What we do in hospitality is what we are providing is a quintessential human need. I had to wait for him to leave the room. I knew he'd be embarrassed when he heard that. But I love that. That's what you are doing, is you're actually doing the connections that are a quintessential thing. So what now? Just try it. So this conference with peers, ask, try and go 4 deep, try and not assume, don't have any judgment. This weekend, when you're with your family, after the conference, try it with someone. Don't tell them what you're doing. Don't say, I'm trying something out from the conference. Little test. I did it with my husband once during 5 years ago, in a car ride. I just asked him questions about how he feels about sports. Do I care? No. Did I forced myself. At the end, I was even more in love with him. At the end, I could not believe what he revealed. I just asked him questions for an hour and a half. He did not know that this was a test. Not that whether I was going to divorce him or anything, but just a test. And did he ask me any questions back? No, because they don't know that yet. He knows that now. He'll kind of go, I suppose I'm supposed to ask a question now. And I go, yeah. But if you do it with family, I will promise you, you know, this whole commitment, conviction, courage. If you do it with someone that you think you know inside out, I did it with an employee who's been with me for 20 years. I asked her questions for an hour and a half, but I said to her, I'm going to go 4 deep. I'm going to go 21 deep. Like, I wanted to find out stuff that I'd never been able to ask before, and I just went deeper, deeper, deeper based on everything she said. Not a skimmer, just all the way down deep. The stuff I learned was life-changing for me and her. But do it with your family, and you will get a deeper connection with anyone you choose. And then next week with guests. I put guests in quotes. Next week with the humans, the beautiful humans that you come across, who you know if you make a deeper connection with, they will remember you and your place because you were beautiful to them as a human being. Like, I will never forget my hygienist. I don't know what her name is, by the way. But I will never forget her because she made me feel like I mattered by asking me 2 things, 2 levels down. And that's it for today. Have fun harnessing the power of a good question. Thank you, everybody. Oh, very nice. Thank you. I can't wait to experience it all.